Math World, solving time, excellent. Welcome to another edition, and actually last edition of Math World. We are going to go over a couple of concepts that we finished up last 6 weeks, and we wanted to show you what we've been working on since our last time that we saw each other. So we are going to show you some fractions and decimals that your kids have been working on as soon as I move the page. So the first one we're going to go over is this fraction word problem. So we've been working a lot with fractions since 3rd grade, and now in 4th grade we are comparing fractions with unlike denominators. So we've learned different things like benchmark fractions and fractions that are 1 unit away from a whole, unit fraction away from a whole. And I'm going to show you one last thing that we learned just in case that's still a little hard for your child to remember all the different things that we've learned as far as fractions. So I have Mr. Bryant poured water into 3 1-gallon containers. He poured 4/5 of a gallon into the first, 4/8 gallon into the second, and 3/4 of a gallon into the third. Which comparison is true? So I'm going to write these on the board over here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about these fractions. So we have 3/4, we have 4/8, and our other fraction was, let me go back. Okay, so our last fraction was 4/5. So I'm going to write all these down, and we're going to talk about what we've talked about in class as far as thinking about our fractions. So if we look at our 3 fractions here, we have 2 fractions that are 1 unit fraction away. And so a unit fraction is a fraction with a numerator of 1. So we know that 4/5 is 1 unit fraction away from being 1 whole, 5/5. We know that 3/4 is 1 unit fraction, so 1/4 away from being 1 whole. And then this guy is really special. This is what we call a benchmark fraction, and we know that 4/8 is equivalent to 1/2. So there's some thinking that we're doing here, and then that makes it a little bit easier when we're comparing these. Now, since we have 2 fractions that are only a unit fraction away from a whole, then our thinking is the greater the denominator, the smaller the jump to 1 whole. So since this has a greater denominator, it is only 1/5 away from a whole, so we know that 4/5 is greater than 3/4. If I look at 4/5 and I compare it to 4/8, something that we learned in 3rd grade is when my numerators are the same, that I know they're not going to be equal, so I focus on my denominator, and we use that same rule. The greater the denominator, the smaller the piece. So since this is 8, that means that these are cut up into smaller pieces, and I also know that it's equivalent to 1/2. So we know that 4/8 is less than 4/5. And so then I have 3/4, and I'm comparing it to 4/8. And same thing here, this is only 1 unit fraction away from a whole. This is halfway to a whole, so I know 3/4 is greater. Something that we also taught your kids is, if this is all too much to remember and to hold on to, we've taught them to cross multiply. So this is what it looks like. Three-fourths, 4/5, 15, 16, and so we know that 4/5 is greater. I can do that over here with 3/4 and 4/8, 16, 24. So I know 3/4 is greater than 4/8, and my last one would be 4/5 and 4/8, 20, and I have 32. So same thinking, same results. We know that 4/5 is greater than 20. So let's go back and look at our word problem. So Mr. Bryant poured water into 3 1-gallon containers. He poured 4/5 of a gallon, 4/8 of a gallon, and 3/4 of a gallon. Which comparison is true? So this is what we just did. We did that cross multiplication, but we also used benchmark fractions and unit fractions to help us. So the first one is 4/5 is less than 3/4. So remember we said the greater the denominator, the smaller the jump to 1 whole. So we know that this is not true. 3/4 is less than 4/5. I think that's one of the ones that we proved here a little while ago. Then we have 3/4 is less than 1/2. And so we showed that this is 1 unit fraction away from a whole, and this is only 1/2, so we know this is not true. And we have 4/5 is less than 1/2. Again, this is 1 unit fraction away from a whole, and this is equal to 1/2. So we know our correct answer is H. Take it away, Miss Hill.
Okay, so for the next problem, we are going to be looking at decimals and switching them off to fractions. So the kids have learned how to read decimals and how to read mixed numbers. When you read them the same. We teach them that the decimal says the word and. Okay, so when you're also reading a mixed fraction, you read the whole number, say and then you read the fractional part. Now, with decimals, we've only taught them the tenths and the hundredths. So there's only 2 choices for denominators when you are comparing the two. So for this one, it says that Teresa listened to a podcast for 35 and 3/10 minutes. Which fraction is equivalent to 35 and 3/10? Okay, so you would read it and then write it. 35 and 3/10 is equivalent to 35 and 3/10. Now, when you are showing the comparisons or when they're asking you for the comparisons, I always teach the kids to check the denominator. Okay, if you go back to the choices on this one, you will see that one of the denominators is 30, I believe, and another one is 100, and then a couple of them might be 10. And so if they know their place value, the first place value after the decimal is their tenths place, and the second one would be hundredths. So there's only 2 choices that they have for denominators when they're finding the equivalent fraction, or not only fraction but also mixed number. They will also be asked to find which improper fraction is equivalent, but neither here nor there. The denominator will always be the same as the place value that decimal is sitting in.
Look at the answer choices.
Okay, so F says 353 hundredths. Now, immediately they should know that this is in the tenths, so that one cannot be correct. G says 35 thirtieths. Again, place values in the tenths, so the denominator cannot be 30. H and J are the same mixed numbers, however, one is in tenths, one is in hundredths. At the end of the day, looking at the 4 options, they should automatically know that only H can be the answer due to the tenths. They won't always be that easy, but if they can read it, they can write it. So I would just have them practice reading decimals and then creating the mixed number or improper fraction that matches it. Okay, so that would be the best case scenario on the STAR test, is asking them to change this decimal into a mixed number. However, most likely it's going to be a little bit more difficult than that. Another option would be they're going to see it as an improper fraction. So if they did not have this as a choice on the test, most likely their answer choice would be 353 over 10. Okay. Now, you're probably thinking, how is my kid supposed to determine that that is equivalent? Well, what they would do is put 353 in a place value chart. You're going to look at how many tens are in the number 353. There will be 35 tens in 353, which means 35 is going to be your whole number. Your ones place has a 3 in it. So your fractional part is going to be 3/10. Your denominator won't change. Remember that. So if your fraction is in the, if your decimal is in the tenths place, your fraction has to be in the tenths place. So I would say that on the STAR test, their answer choices would not have 35 and 3/10. It would have 353/10.
Let's look at the questions that we want your kids to try on their own. All right, so these are the questions that we would like for your child to try on their own at home and bring back to us. Jake's art project is 1/6 complete. Penelope's is 3/8 complete, and Olivia's is 2/4 complete. Which comparison is true? So we have a benchmark fraction here, we have 1 unit fraction, and we have a fraction that's close to a benchmark fraction. So we want to see that that work and that thinking. And remember, if they can't do that, then they can do the cross multiplication.
They can also use a number line to help them with the benchmarking of the fractions. If you see them drawing a number line and plotting it, whether it's closest to 1, closest to 0, or closest to 1/2, and that can help them. Now, I will say that this isn't foolproof because sometimes the fractions are too close to the same size, and then that's when you would use the unit fractions or the equivalent to 1/2.
All right, and the next question is a decimal to fraction. So the values of numbers A, B, C are shown on the table. You have value A, 6 and 25/100ths, B, 7 and 9/10ths, C, 52/100ths. So which table represents the same information? So again, what we would like for them to do is write these out first and then look at your answer choices. So if you solve first and then you look at your answer choices, you've already done half the work. So, all right, thank you for joining us for this video. I know it was a little long, but it is more than just fractions and decimals we're doing. We're doing this in word problems, and we just want them to be as prepared as they can. So happy solving!